Bob Cratchit's like, I'm gonna grab the ruler and beat this man and then call for help because, Scrooge thinks this is a joke. And Scrooge is like, oh, I did the humor! Ha-ha!
The fact that he goes, haha, I'm a changed man. I'm going to play the most horrible prank I can on the man that I constantly berate. Hey, you piece of shit, you're okay. I'm giving you a raise. Like, what? What's going on?
How dare you, only employee that I have, be late the day after Christmas? Just for that, I'm giving you a raise. Oh, I did the humor, and we're gonna drink during lunch.
It would have been even better if he's like, hey, you're late, and your wife just called, your kid's dead. Just kidding. I'm paying for his medical expenses.
The modern retelling that Slava's gonna do for this is gonna be great.
I'm for it. I'm here.
The Russian version.
The Russian version with cell phones.
Coming to you from an endless library, where every book is read and every spoiler discussed. Join us as we dig into the lives of fictional people who cannot defend themselves. This is the Side Quest Book Club. Hey, Side Questers. Merry Christmas, because I didn't say it last episode. So I hope you had a great Christmas, and you have a great New Year's coming up.
Bahamba. It's a Russian pronunciation.
Yeah. It's weird that you can always fall back on that. Anyway, today we have the awesome opportunity to have Josh join us. He has actually decided to be our first side quest intern, which is super exciting. He's loved podcasting for a long time. He's wanted to get into it, and we need extra help. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the stuff that we put out. We want to put out a lot more, but we are just limited by being two guys who've got lives, wives, and dogs, and flashing lights in the background. So, Josh, welcome. Why don't you give us a little intro? Name, what you love about podcasting, and any sort of like recent book you've read besides A Christmas Carol, which is what we're covering today.
Yeah.
For 30-second intro.
All right, I'm Josh. I work in finance, and so I really wanted like a creative outlet. I don't really get that opportunity to do something super creative other than just creating Excel spreadsheets and different models. So
that could be creative.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, no, you have more restraint. So actually, it might be more creative. You have to be a little bit more creative. So, but I really do enjoy storytelling, and so that's what really got me interested in podcasting and this podcast. In terms of recent books. I like pretty heavy books or like books on economics and business, things like Good to Great, or like a book that my best friend has made fun of me for that I really like reading was Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. It's like a dictionary. It's a very long book. Or books like Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. That's a favorite. Crime and Punishment. So, yeah.
We're going to do Crime and Punishment again sometime. Well, I say again because I've read it before. We're going to do Crime and Punishment sometime in the near future. So,
okay.
I'm glad that you've read it before.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, today we are reading Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And a lot of you may have read this growing up, but it being the Christmas season, we thought we should do at least one seasonal book. So, Slava, do you want to give us a background of Mr. Dickens himself?
Sure thing. Charles John Huffam Dickens, born 7th February of 1812, is an English novelist, journalist, and short story writer, and a social critic. He has created some of literature's best-known fictional characters and is regarded by some as the greatest novelist of the Victorian era. Born in Portsmouth, Dickens left school at 12 to work in a book blacking factory when his father was incarcerated in a debtor's prison. So I think some of that comes out in his works, at least that experience in some facet. After 3 years, he returned to school before beginning his literary career as a journalist. Dickens edited a weekly journal for 20 years, wrote 15 novels, 5 novellas, hundreds of short stories, and nonfiction articles. And he also lectured and performed readings extensively. He was a tireless letter writer and campaigned vigorously for children's rights, education, and other social reforms. So his literary success began in the 1836 serial publication of the Pickwick Papers. His 1843 novella, A Christmas Carol, which we're covering, remains especially popular and continues to inspire adaptations in many different creative mediums. Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, are also frequently adapted. Like many of his novels, all of them evoke images of early Victorian London. His 1853 novel, Bleak House, which was a satire on the judicial system, helped support a reformist movement that culminated in the 1870s legal reform in England. A Tale of Two Cities, another book he's famous for, written in 1859 and set in London, Paris, is regarded as his best-known work of historical fiction. That is a little bit about our boy Dickens.
Exciting times. Do you happen to know, Slava, like when did A Christmas Carol get famous? Like when did it become like the book we had to read during Christmas?
I don't know. I remember, and I'm in my 40s, so I remember it being already a staple 40 years ago.
That's what I'm wondering. Where it's like, Josh, did you read it growing up as a kid, like in school?
No, I don't remember ever reading it, to be perfectly honest. But one of my favorite Christmas movies was A Muppet Christmas Carol.
Okay,
It's
close enough.
I think it's a great adaptation of the story.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I read it when I was a kid, and I think I remember us reading it like second grade, third. It was like every year we would read A Christmas Carol like in school. Maybe it's because teachers didn't have anything else to offer us. I don't remember there being any like Dr. Seuss Christmas items, but
Yeah. Well, I would venture to guess it was probably as the Victorian era was dying off, it became more popular because people looking back saw it as a social critique. It captured the zeitgeist of the early Victorian era, and I think him being a social critic, as was mentioned in his bio, people started going back to it and going, oh, this is a good thing that he wrote. This is a good commentary, and then it became part and staple of school readings. Because at least my teacher in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, our spelling teacher he was called, but really it was a reading class. It was a lit class. I don't know why they called it spelling. But nevertheless, he made us read books that offered social commentary on the world.
Good.
Yeah. So this was one of them. So I imagine that's how it became popular or a standard in schools.
maybe. I mean, I do feel like these teachers end up going like, oh, I have my kids read this, and then other teachers realize like, oh, I should take a couple of those too and save myself literally having to decide whatever. But I'm speculating. If you're a teacher, at me in the comments. I probably was one of your worst students. Well, so the story's actually quite short. There's 5 chapters. Is that right, Slava?
I believe
right.
so. Yeah, 5 chapters.
I think it's 5. Yeah.
It's exactly 5 chapters.
So when I was reading it, I noticed something curious. I don't think it's exactly this, but I did text you guys this week that I think, based on my remembrance, that A Christmas Carol is actually a chiastic structure. Slava, can you confirm that for me in terms of like you remember what a chiastic structure? I'll explain it to the audience here as well. But a chiastic structure is a story that mirrors itself, and it culminates at a central point in the middle where something important happens. And so ancient authors think like biblical times and other ancient times, Greeks, Romans, etc. They didn't have the same level of storytelling capability is not the right word, but they didn't. We've developed in how we tell stories today, right? So theirs was more, I'll say, quote unquote, rudimentary, which is not a great word either, because chiastic structure is brilliant, but it was just an earlier form of storytelling. And so chiastic structure was used in a way to emphasize whatever that central point is. So with there being 5 chapters, the 3rd chapter has a key point where Scrooge ends up taking a turn in his character, a turn in his decisions on how he wants to live the rest of his life. And then as we're moving out of the story, we're seeing a mirror of the things that have happened in his life. And Slava, you can correct me on this if you want, if you notice something different, but like in the beginning he starts in his house and it's cold, in the end he's in his house and it's warm. In the second chapter he's in his house and whatever's happening. In the fourth chapter he's in his house and blah blah blah. So like you can see there's this mirror effect going on. And I read it twice this week and I was like, oh, I really think, and then I had to relook up the chiastic structure. So that's a little bit about chiastic structure. Slava, did you notice that? Josh, did you notice it?
I didn't.
I'm trying to remember that third chapter. So then that third chapter was the ghost of Christmas present.
Present.
Right? So, yeah, it's like him living in the moment, actually like enjoying the moment, because, I mean, at the beginning, he doesn't feel anything, right? He like can't even feel the cold. And so it's actually him enjoying the moment, both like not reflecting negatively on the past and not thinking like being afraid of the future, and actually being in the present.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything like that. I mean, I'm happy to assent to your theory, but I just didn't notice it.
My notes aren't loading. Oh, there we are. All right. Let's just give a quick look. Yeah, Scrooge's misery. So another thing about chiastic structure, because that's just what I'm bringing to the table today, is when it does the mirroring. So like plot point 1 would be called A, and the end plot point that mirrors it would be called A1. Plot point B, and then B1 in the mirror on the back end, and then main point would be C as a standalone. And so we've got Marley's ghost, where Scrooge has a heartless life, just like Josh was saying. Marley warns him about chains to come. Plot point B, the ghost of Christmas past. There's this emotional reflection and regret. His humanity starts to resurface. We start to see a little bit of that change. And he goes, well, I just wanted to stay a little longer. Oh, okay. We'll go, spirit. We'll go. And then the third one is the present, the moral center, if you will, where the ghost of Christmas present comes and he has his turning point. He starts to feel empathy. He starts to warm up. He starts to realize that his money's worthless and all these people hated him. And then we move to B1, where it's a reflection. And so we see that his fear turns to horror. And it's reflecting that humanity, because we have emotional reflection in point B. And then B1 is mirroring that with fear and reflecting the horrors. And then the final point is the opposite of plot point A, where he's joyful and generous, and he made a decision to be redeemed in the midst of his life, instead of it ending where everyone's happy that he's gone, and stuff like that. So
I'm happy to agree with you. This is the first time I'm hearing it about Dickens' Christmas Carol, though. But hey, makes sense.
Me too. But I read it and I was like, I think this is a chiastic structure. So I did a little research. And so I was like, yeah, it looks like it is. Now, is detailed chiastic structure that you and I would be more familiar with, Slava? Nah, I think it's a little bit in the gray area, honestly. It's not a one-to-one the way that, like, Noah's Ark as a story is mirrored, like, God did this, Noah did this, Noah did this, and then it, like, moves towards the center. It's not that detailed, but...
Yeah. And I'm wondering if Dickens really had a chiastic structure in mind, or did it just work out that way, and that's why it's a little bit looser?
I think it worked out that way.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the Ancients ended up, like, very purposefully putting that in, as opposed to people who kind of stumble on it. It's like, oh, there's a reflection here. But honestly, I think that's really great storytelling.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's kind of cool. I like it. I like it, Jonathan. Should we move on to the plot summary?
Do it.
Get into it. So, it's Christmas Eve, but Ebenezer Scrooge, a businessman of some sort in London, stubbornly refuses to acknowledge the holiday. His clerk, Bob Cratchit, huddles in the outer office, trying to warm himself with only a candle. Scrooge won't allow him to add coal to the fire. Scrooge's nephew Fred drops by the office full of cheer and invites Scrooge to join him and his new wife for Christmas dinner. Scrooge rebuffs the invitation but Fred refuses to be offended. Scrooge is visited by some gentlemen at the office soliciting donations for those who cannot afford food or warmth over the holiday. But Scrooge refuses to contribute, blaming the poor for their supposed laziness. If they have no money, he says, they should go to the workhouses or debtor prisons. And if they won't do that, they should die and reduce the surplus population. At the end of the working day, he grumbles resentfully that his clerk will probably want Christmas off and tells him to be at the office all the earlier the day after. Then Scrooge goes home. As he sits up late by the fire, he hears the sound of rattling chains as the ghost of his former partner, Jacob Marley, appears. Marley is bound by the chains he forged in life, and Scrooge warns that his own chains are longer and heavier. Marley has arranged for Scrooge to have one chance to escape his fate. 3 spirits will come to him over the next 3 nights, and Scrooge must heed them if he hopes to save his soul. As Scrooge goes to bed, the first specter visits him. He is soon visited by the second and third, and after his encounters with the specters, Scrooge wakes and finds that his entire adventure took only 1 night instead of 3, and that he hasn't missed Christmas Day. Scrooge sends an enormous turkey to the Cratchit family for their dinner. Encountering one of the benevolent gentlemen he rebuffed the previous day, he promises an enormous donation in aid for the poor. He attends his nephew's dinner party and has a wonderful time. And the next day, a transformed man, he gives Bob Cratchit a raise. He also becomes a benefactor of the Cratchit family and second father to Tiny Tim, allowing the boy to survive. For the rest of Scrooge's life, he makes it his business to keep Christmas in his heart all year long.
This story I like. It's interesting to me how similar it is to what it reminds me of is the story in the Gospel of Luke when the rich man dies and Lazarus dies, and the rich man is begging that Lazarus is with Abraham, and the rich man begs Lazarus to go and warn his brothers. It's like that. I don't know. It's just a crazy thought concept of being warned by somebody who knows the life that you are living, where it leads to, coming back to warn you and to change your course.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Yeah, for sure. Because I think we live lives, whether good, bad, or otherwise, we kind of come to a point in our lives where we're so ingrained in our beliefs and our ways of doing things, our habits, that we at times don't realize when we drift off course, and that the decisions we make and the lives we live sometimes are trite, and sometimes, as in Scrooge's case, the only word that comes to mind is they're offensive to other people. They're not good lives. They're harmful, the decisions, not just to yourself, because you grow into yourself, kind of fold into yourself and become this curmudgeon. And then that doesn't just hurt you because you're a rich loner in a big house. You're also kind of a dick to everybody around you, and you hurt them. You're not just, you say mean words to your employees, but you actively, whether you acknowledge it consciously or not, but you actively hurt those people. And so we see that in Scrooge's life for sure, and his redemption arc, I think, in a 3-hour read, I think Dickens really does a good job, consolidating what could be, a 400-page book into whatever this is, 150 or something like that. Yeah.
I liked at the end where Dickens really wraps it up, where it's like, and then Scrooge became a second father to Tiny Tim. Okay.
Nobody
Don't
saw
mind
that
the
coming.
fact that he kicked don't mind the fact that he kicked the crutch out from under him, and at least one of the ones that I remember watching. Of course, I guess I could be making that up, but
that probably is in a movie adaptation or something to make him even more of a asshole to the audience.
Yeah.
He was talking about the surplus population with the charity folks.
There we go.
Are you enjoying today's side quest? Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. We are available on YouTube and all major platforms, so you can listen to us anywhere. And now, back to the show. Well, let's get into chapter 1, guys. It is Christmas Eve, and the streets of London are wrapped in an icy fog. People and carriages passing on the street outside the window are obscured like wraiths or ghosts, and sound is muffled. Scrooge is working and keeping a gimlet eye on the clerk, Bob Cratchit. Scrooge's nephew, Fred, breezes into the office wishing Scrooge a Merry Christmas. Scrooge dismisses him contemptuously with the pronouncement that Christmas has never done any good or put money in anybody's pocket. Fred protests that many things have done good and haven't made him wealthier, and Christmas is one of them. Fred invites Scrooge to Christmas dinner, but Scrooge refuses and then dismisses him. Next, the two gentlemen come to the office, taking up contributions to provide food and warmth for the poor. Scrooge refuses, rebuffs, and dismisses them, claiming that prisons and workhouses are sufficient to provide for the idle. The gentlemen argue that those institutions are degrading and are inadequate, and that many people would rather die than use them. Scrooge responds that if that's the case, then maybe they should die.
When I was rereading this, the Scrooge's responses, I was just like, man, cold-hearted. All right,
Yeah.
buddy.
Yeah.
Who hurt you? I really want to know, like, I want Dickens to write a pre-novel, like, Scrooge grew up
His
like
origin
Tiny
story,
Tim.
his villain origin story.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. The fog becomes thicker and colder. At the office door, a boy begins to sing a carol, but Scrooge drives him off. At the end of the day, Scrooge grumbles to his clerk that he supposes Bob will feel ill-used if Scrooge would dock his pay. Bob returns to his loving family, stopping on the way only to play with several little boys who are skating on the icy patch in the street. Scrooge goes back to his own cold and empty house. Approaching his door, he is startled to see his door knocker has been transformed into the face of his old partner, Marley. A moment later, it turns back into a door knocker, and Scrooge tells himself he must have imagined it. He climbs the wide stairway towards his room, but he has only gone halfway when a spectral locomotive hearse rushes by him. Unnerved, Scrooge settles down in front of his meager fire and makes himself a bowl of warm gruel as a treatment.
Yes, let me warm up with some warm gruel.
You are what you eat. A treatment for a head cold he has developed. The ringing of a bell interrupts his contemplations, and Jacob Marley Ghosts appears, wearing a chain of cash boxes, padlocks, keys, deeds, ledgers, and heavy purses. Once Marley has convinced Scrooge that Scrooge is not imagining him, Marley says his spirit has been roaming the earth as punishment for not making it his business to care for his fellow human beings. He has come to warn Scrooge that he will share his fate unless he changes his ways. To that end, Marley has arranged for Scrooge to have one chance to change. He tells Scrooge that 3 spirits will visit him, one each night, over the following 3 days. Scrooge stammers that he would rather they didn't. Marley tells Scrooge he would be wise to heed what the spirits show him. Marley must then return to his hopeless wandering. Looking out the window after him, Scrooge sees the sky full of spirits bewailing their inability to ease the suffering of the living.
You know, I'm wondering if I was asked to be a guest on this podcast as a member of the finance profession. You know, I'm a money changer.
Ah, yes.
Are you trying to convict me of some sins that
Not
I
giving
have,
to the poor?
I'm
Yes.
not giving to the poor,
Where's-
Jonathan?
No, we're trying to manipulate you to fund the side quest podcast.
Okay,
That's right. You're a quote unquote intern, but
Yeah.
we're gonna need you to pull out that pocketbook, boy.
So I have all
It's
this
Christmas after all.
wealth. All this wealth I've been just hoarding and sitting on.
Yeah. Yes.
The old curmudgeon.
Yeah, the Dutch are known for their
Yeah.
miserly ways.
Oh, that is
true.
true. That is true. I'm living up to that.
Oh man. But what would you guys do if like one of your old pals came back? Now, this is not one of his old pals, right? Like Marley's been dead for 7 years and Scrooge is still a curmudgeon, but like it took Marley 7 years to get back to him and be like, "Yo dog, you want this to be you?" And he like drops his chain on the floor, right? And then, it's like the modern day just like flapping it out on the table. He just drops his chain on the floor and he goes, "You want this to be you? This is what's going to happen." You know what I'd really love? I want someone to do a remake. I don't think we can do this in today's society. A remake of A Christmas Carol in different people's ethnicities. Just let your mind...
Yeah, I don't know that.
It's going to include a lot of stereotypes for each different version, but I'd love to see that. And that's on the record, so...
Yep.
The Side Quest podcast is getting canceled on my first appearance. All right.
There we are. That's why we need the money, because we're getting canceled.
Yeah.
And we need money for those lawyers and a PR firm.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. So typically in books, right, the refusing a call is an indication that the hero is not looking for any trouble, like Bilbo Baggins. He's like, no, I'm good in my little hovel here. I don't want any trouble. I don't want to go on any adventure.
Good day.
But here, because Scrooge is an anti-hero, and he's a protagonist with negative traits like greed, selfishness, indifference to others, just, he doesn't care about people. And in his case, the refusing of the call is an indication of his weakness rather than a peaceable nature or just, maybe a little bit of cowardice on a protagonist side that needs a push into, whatever, getting courage and all that stuff. So, what do you guys think about that? Does that make sense? Am I on track? I mean, I think I'm on track, but well, if you guys want to unpack that a little bit, I'll be happy to bounce some ideas back and forth.
Slava, can you remind us what the parameters of an anti-hero is real quick? Because I think the last time we talked about an anti-hero was like 14 to 30 episodes ago. So if they're tuning in new, I just want to do a quick refresher.
Yeah, sure. So an anti-hero is a central character in a story who almost all the time, because it kind of works out differently depending on the genre, I think, but in traditional literature, it's one who lacks traditional heroic qualities like courage, nobility, morality, peacefulness. Instead, they may be cynical, selfish, have weak moral compass, often perform heroic actions but for personal reasons or by chance, and they're not a traditional hero, but they often play the protagonist role in a story. So that would be like a Cliff Notes version of the definition, because there's, as you guys know, there's different genres and different creative mediums, so anti-heroes are portrayed differently, and it does get a little bit more nuanced than what I just said, but generally speaking, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Thanks.
So now this is where you guys interact with what I said 30 seconds ago.
Good commentary. All right. Next episode. We don't have an intern anymore. The intern didn't work out, but
No.
we'll introduce the next one shortly.
Okay. I mean, he's definitely he definitely, I think, fits that description. Right? I mean, he's the protagonist in the story, and he is not a upstanding member of this like society, this community, in the sense that he's contributing other than just really just taking money from people and hoarding it for himself.
The reason I bring that up is one of the prominent themes of the story is the relationship between greed and poverty. And Dickens saw the problems of economic, stratification in his time. So there was the rich, slightly less rich, and then just very, very poor. So the commentary here is on the society as a whole, because there were probably more Scrooges than we want to admit. It's not just all
100%.
these benevolent rich people doing everything they can to help the poor underneath them, and then there's one guy who's just a jerk kind of on the side, and the spirits in the universe decided to interject into this guy's life to help him. The commentary is like, hey, the Victorian era was plagued by the type of life that Scrooge led and the ideas that he had. And it comes out in other stories and other movies. We always see movies, whether they're historical fiction or just fiction, but if you pluck any of them out from their, their bookshelves, you'll see in this era there was a lot of hatred and disdain, if you will, for the poor.
For the poors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stop being poor. What's Paris Hilton say? Don't be poor, or whatever.
When did she say that?
She used to have like a line. I'll look it up.
Because I think I remember that on one of her reality
Scrooge,
TV shows.
Paris Hilton.
There you go. Come full circle.
Stop being poor.
Yeah, I mean, Scrooge he's so afraid of being poor that he can't even enjoy what he has accumulated in material wealth.
Off the backs of the poor.
Off the backs, yeah.
I want to contrast the fact that Scrooge's nephew is one of the cheeriest. Like in the book, it says he's basically, if you know anyone cheerier, introduce me to him, the narrator, right? So one last thing before we move to chapter 2 is, what do you think about the contrast between Scrooge and his nephew, where his nephew's just this jovial guy? The narrator tells us, like, if you've ever met anyone who's happier than this, like, I want you to introduce me to them, right? Like, there's this very stark black and white. If Scrooge is black and his nephew is white in terms of, like, their inner person, where Scrooge is cold and dark and mean, and his nephew is bright and joyful and full of life, what stood out to you in terms of that, where, like, A, they're related, and B, the guy's so joyful he won't even, like, when we get ahead and he's in talking to the ghosts, his nephew will, like, poke fun at him, but even be like, hey, you know what, let's drink to his health, right? Like, there's a stark contrast there.
There is, and I think for Dickens, as the commentator, using this book to comment on society, the nephew is the ideal. That's what we all should strive to be in Dickens' mind, and Scrooge is the opposite. So what he's saying is, hey, folks on the top of the strata, you all should strive to be like the nephew. Otherwise, the decisions you're making, the life you're living, the worldview you're holding on to will make you into a Scrooge. And I liked what was said earlier. He can't even enjoy his own wealth. Mm-hmm. So instead of having a warm house and paying his employees well so they bring more profit to him because they're working in a warmed house, they're not worrying about tomorrow, they're not worrying about him going off on them. So he has no thought for anybody but himself. And his nephew, in contrast, even though he thinks his uncle's a bit of a loon or maybe even a jerk, and he's like, to his health, he doesn't know better. So it's just a contrast that is being presented here.
That's all. Carry on to chapter 2.
All right. Chapter 2. Scrooge awakes to a neighborhood church bell ringing at midnight. He's confused because it was well after midnight when he went to bed. He lies awake listening to the bell chime the quarter hours. The hour strikes 1. The bed curtains by Scrooge's head are pulled aside and a light streams in on him, revealing The Ghost of Christmas Past. The ghost is a diminutive spirit, both old and young, sometimes solid, sometimes wavering, and a light burns from his head like the flame of a candle. In his mind he carries a conical cap and a candle snuffer. He announces to Scrooge that he's the ghost of Christmas past and bids Scrooge to come with him. Scrooge realizes that resisting is pointless, though he does protest when the ghost leads him toward the window. However, the ghost places his hand over Scrooge's heart and leads him directly through the wall. Scrooge finds himself on a wintry road near the school where he spent much of his childhood. The sights, the sounds, and the smells of the scene overwhelm him. The other boys are all on their way home for the holiday. Scrooge recognizes them and calls out to them, but the ghost explains that the boys are only shadows and cannot see or hear him. The ghost reminds Scrooge that one child is still at the school alone. They enter the dilapidated schoolhouse, where they see young Scrooge reading by a small fire. The older Scrooge is struck by the memory of being this forgotten, unwanted boy and begins to weep. The spirit touches him and draws his attention to the parade of imaginary people passing by the window. All the characters of all the books young Scrooge read and loved. Scrooge laughs with delight to see them, but then suddenly sobers, saying that he wishes he had given something to the boy who stopped to sing a Christmas carol outside his door. The ghost shows Scrooge another Christmas, this one a few years later. Scrooge is older, the school is dingier, and instead of reading, young Scrooge is pacing back and forth. The door flies open, and Scrooge's younger sister, little Fan, darts in. She throws her arms around him and cries that she is bringing him home for Christmas, that he will never have to return to the school, and that he is to be a man. The ghost reminds Scrooge that Fred is his beloved sister's son. Next, the ghost brings Scrooge to the old warehouse where he was apprenticed. His employer, Fezziwig, is a cheerful old man wearing a Welsh wig. At 7 o'clock, Fezziwig orders Scrooge and Dick, Scrooge's fellow apprentice, to put up the shutters and clear the floor. The neighbors begin to arrive, filling the warehouse with laughter and music and dancing. The ghost remarks on how cheap and easy it is to make such silly people grateful, and Scrooge passionately replies that Fezziwig's kindness had a value surpassing money. He sobers, thinking of Bob Cratchit. Leaving Fezziwig, the spirit shows Scrooge a somewhat older version of himself, seated beside his fiancée Belle. She breaks their engagement, telling him that money has taken the place she used to hold in his heart. The scene changes, and Belle is now a mother to a lively family. Her husband returns home and informs her that he has seen Scrooge sitting alone in his office while his partner Marley is at death's door. Seeing the family, especially the daughter he might have had, Scrooge begs the spirit to take him home. He seizes the spirit's cap and pushes it down on the spirit's head, forcing it all the way to the floor, but the light continues to stream out from beneath. A moment later, he finds himself back in his own bedroom, terribly drowsy, and staggers back to bed.
I think there's the pain, Jonathan, that has caused him to be who he is. You can see that in the story of his past.
I realize this is your first go around, but I'm gonna just complain about this in every book, basically, about wanting more world building and background, because it's just how I am, Josh.
Okay.
So I agree. It was there. I got this like series of vignettes, right? But I just want a little more from this. I want to squeeze the life out of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Kindly, with kindness.
Yeah, it's never enough. No matter what the author gives Jonathan, it's never enough.
No.
He just takes and takes and takes.
Man.
He's kind of like Scrooge's fire. There's no coal in it.
There's never enough story. There's never enough storytelling.
No.
It's a short, you know,
That's what I'm saying.
it's a kids, it's a, you know, it's meant to be shared with kids who have short attention spans.
So let's unpack chapter 2 a little bit. And I think we should start with Scrooge being this lonely little kid. Like the first vignette, as Jonathan calls it, where everybody else, all the boys are running home to their families. It seems like this school is kind of a crappy school. It's decrepit. It's dilapidated. But these kids still have somewhere to go to. And they like where they have to go. You know, whether it's a poor family they're going to, a not-so-poor family, they seem to be happy that it's Christmas time and they're running home. But Scrooge, at this point, he's not anti-Christmas, and he's not the Scrooge that we know him in his 20s, 30s, and now when he's an older man. He's just alone in this room reading. So he's yet not broken, but he's still a lone little kid. So I found that scene not endearing. What's another word? Maybe help me out, Jonathan. Sometimes you're able to pull out a word out of me better. It's not endearing, but I found it...
Provoked compassion?
It was provoking in some sense, yes, but I was able to identify with it. Like, because when I grew up, and people in the audience who have been with us in the beginning got a little bit of a synopsis of my home life when I was a kid. It was pretty terrible. And I found myself alone a lot of times because my mom was a recluse and she tried to turn me into a recluse. And there were times where I was just by myself. And while everybody else was going to their families where they enjoyed spending time with them, I tried to avoid home as much as possible. So instead of dilapidated schools in the 1800s, I found myself in, you know, a library in Massachusetts. But I could identify with Scrooge in this moment.
Yeah, there have been times in the past where I've avoided home for home life issues. 100%.
Remind me, because I watched the adaptation last night, the animated Disney version with Jim Carrey, 2009, and in that scene with his younger sister Fan, in the Disney movie, she had talked about their dad being like abusive or something like that. Was that in the actual novel? I can't remember. I couldn't remember when she said that, if that was actually in the novel.
Jonathan, you read it most recently. Do you remember?
I don't remember if that's mentioned. It's a one-liner, but I don't remember that line at all. Okay. My guess is it's an addition for the Disney version, just to like give us a justification for why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad assumption.
Because she says Father is like not angry right now, or he is like in a good mood. It's Christmas. You can come home. Something to that effect. So it's like, okay, this is why he's shut out at school from his friends, and he's also has this rough home life.
Right, because I think Fan, his sister, is the archetype of child savior, right? Mm. She literally is Scrooge's savior, intervening with her father to permit him to come home. Mm-hmm. So there has to be something at home that pushes Scrooge out, but Fan, still wanting Scrooge to be part of the family, must have, and this is speculation, must have said something to appease Father's anger or disdain for Scrooge, that he says, okay, fine, the little shit can come home for Christmas. Again, speculative. I'm putting words in his father's mouth, but I think there's something at home
Yeah.
And he rejects his opportunity to go home, I think. And yeah. And it's interesting. Another thing that's just before a fan's prediction that he's going to become a man, it kind of, it doesn't come through, right? Because Scrooge fails to become a man in the sense that he embodies what a man should be like what a grown man in society should do. He fails to do that because he constantly rejects those saviors that come to him in his life until these ghosts. It's only at the end of his life where he responds correctly to the saviors, quote unquote, that are sent to him.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that it's then her son that is that joyful, man, and when he's a man, when he's older.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's how do I say this? It's the recognition of the loss that finally overwhelms Scrooge. And then he tries to snuff out the memory altogether. So again, with this first ghost, again, quote-unquote savior, he's still old Scrooge, even though now he's kind of been pierced to the heart because all these memories are coming back to him. And I'm sure he's reliving some of the stuff that he felt as a child and how he slowly got harder and harder.
Well, and don't we all do that, right? Like if you got some stuff in your childhood and you're like, I don't want to deal with this. You don't have to. That's literally part of the freedom of being an adult, right? Like you literally don't have to deal with stuff if you don't want to. However, you will get the consequences of living your life that way. And in Scrooge's, manner, that means that you're like, honestly, of all the people that we meet in this story, I think the only person who ever loved him is, take a guess.
His sister.
His sister, yeah.
His sister, what'd you say, Josh?
I said
First?
Fan, his sister. That's her name, right?
No. I think it's his business partner.
Oh.
Because his business partner actually calls him out on his BS. Like, hey, you're going to do this. To referencing your point from earlier where, like, can I go back and tell my family? Right? Not to say that his sister, don't get me wrong, like, not to say his sister didn't love him, but, like, in his adult age. All right, I guess I'll say that. Maybe I didn't say the
yeah, because, I mean, Fan is warning, is kind of, in a sense, warning him, you're going to be a man. Like, are you going to live into that? I don't know.
All right, so two characters loved him.
Yeah. But because of what he went through, and I'm not defending him, but I understand him, because of what he went through, he kept pushing people away. And initially was just to avoid his family, but slowly, or maybe fastly, in his life as he got older, that circle that he didn't want to be a part of grew larger and larger and larger until he's all alone eating slop, and with all the money he has, he can't even heat his own house. Refuses to heat his own house.
I can't wait till we read Crime and Punishment and you start defending Raskolnikov. Well, because of the way he grew up, he really needed to kill his landlady. Yeah. So I get it.
No, I do get it. I'm kidding. I don't. I won't be defending.
You haven't killed a landlady before? That's like when you're 18. That's table stakes, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to hit back at the bourgeoisie somehow.
Respect.
Pun intended.
Take back the means of production, Slava.
I'm working on it. Next week on SideQuest, Das Kapital.
Oh, man.
Anyway, we're off track as per usual. Chapter 3.
Bring us back.
Sorry,
I was gonna just add,
please.
I mean, I just also thought it was interesting that part of the chapters in the second chapter, his apprenticeship, right, and his old boss, and just like the contrast of who he became in that profession, and probably somebody who he I would assume looked up to. But I mean, maybe he was just in it just to accumulate wealth. And that was it. But, did not become this person that he was training under. Yeah,
he definitely didn't. And a great interruption. Those are the kind of interruptions we like on side quest. He probably did look up to Fezziwig, but because he constantly pushes people out, he never let Fezziwig influence him. You know, he looked at him, he probably appreciated what his boss did, but he never took those things, never learned from them, never replicated them. He constantly pushed people out and, you know, kind of was inverted into himself. That's the only way I can phrase it. And then he became harder and harder and colder and colder. So, no sooner does Scrooge fall asleep after escaping his first spirit than he hears the bell once again chiming 1 o'clock with no intervening day. Scrooge goes to investigate a light from the adjacent room. A voice calls him into the room, which is decorated for Christmas. At the center, a figure dressed as Father Christmas is sitting on a throne of food, introduces himself as the ghost of Christmas Present. Scrooge is meekly subservient with this visitant. He takes hold of the spirit's robe and finds himself on the crowded street on Christmas morning. The shops are full of food. Children run and play. People of the poorer classes don't have adequate cooking facilities, so they carry their dinners to bakeries where their food is cooked. Wherever tempers flare up and people seem about to quarrel, the ghost sprinkles something from his torch over them and restores peace. He sprinkles their holiday meals as well, and Scrooge asks, "What is the spirit adding?" The ghost says that it is the Christmas spirit. It makes everything taste more satisfying on this day, and it is especially needed by these poor folk who have so little. The ghost then brings Scrooge to the home of Bob Cratchit. The Cratchit family are decked out in their best attire, which for the girls means ribbons. The eldest son, Peter, is proud and self-important in his father's best collar. Their oldest daughter, Martha, returns from her job as the hatmaker's apprentice. Finally, Bob returns from church with the youngest child, Tiny Tim, who is thin and frail and walks with a crutch. Bob tells his wife how good and sweet-natured Tim was at the church, and repeats a remark of Tiny Tim's to the effect that he hopes seeing him will give people pleasure by reminding them of Jesus, who healed the sick. When questioned, the ghost informs Scrooge that if nothing happens to change the future, Tiny Tim will die within a year. At the end of the meal, Bob Cratchit offers a toast to Scrooge, who by paying Bob's salary, keeps food on their table and a roof over their head. Mrs. Cratchit isn't so generous. She would like to give Scrooge a piece of her mind. The ghost then walks through the city with Scrooge, watching people rushing back and forth from parties, celebrations, and dinners with friends and loved ones. Then he escorts Scrooge through a sequence of other Christmas scenes, all joyful despite the generally meager circumstances. 2 men alone in the lighthouse, sailors far out at sea, a miner's family somewhere in Cornwall, until they come to Fred's house. Fred is telling his apparently pregnant wife and her sisters that he feels sorry for Scrooge, whose miserly, cold nature deprives him of happiness and harms only himself. His wife, like Bob Cratchit's, is scornful. After dinner, the group plays a number of games, and then Fred's wife plays the harp. Scrooge recognizes the melody as one his little sister loved. Everything the ghost has shown him comes back to him, and he thinks that if he had been able to listen to that song through the years, he might have led a different life. The group plays more games, and Scrooge joins in, although they cannot see or hear him. The ghost finally pulls him away, and they travel the world, seeing Christmas celebrated in numerous ways. As they travel, the ghost ages, and he reveals that he will die at midnight. As the time comes for them to part, Scrooge notices a hand-like claw emerging from the robe of the ghost. The ghost pulls his robe aside, revealing two children, a boy and a girl, emaciated, sickly, and vicious. Scrooge asks the ghost if they are his children, and the ghost says they are the children of humanity. They cling to Christmas for the visage of hope and comfort it gives them. The ghost tells Scrooge that they are named Ignorance and Want, and that they will be humanity's end. When Scrooge asks if there's any recourse, the ghost quotes Scrooge's earlier remark about prisons and workhouses. Midnight approaches, and the ghost of Christmas past disappears, as the ghost of Christmas yet to come approaches.
I do like that he has two children hiding in his robe. You ever see that meme where it's like, I'm just three raccoons stacked on top of each other?
Yeah. So this is two kids and a ghost stacked on top of each other.
Yes. What did you say? Ignorance and
Want.
You think there? Josh, talk to us about the symbolism there. Any observations?
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we've talked about this in our Bible study, right? In terms of we are destroyed for our lack of knowledge, and then just the I guess the desires of man, the lusts of man, you could say, right? That nothing is enough, and so it's that want that destroys humanity.
Yeah, it could be layered too. I think I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that's a very apt analogy or description, but I think there could be a second side of that coin or a second layer. I think Dickens is calling attention to the suffering of the lower economic classes. Maybe want also refers to the survival needs of the poor, like food, shelter, medical care, all that stuff. And an economic class that can't meet these basic needs is a threat to a stable society.
Ooh,
Ignorance, maybe on a superficial level, maybe refers to either the lack of education or the lack of access that the poor have, or maybe it's the ignorance of the rich classes. They are willfully ignorant of what those who want need. So maybe that's it. I think it's very layered, so and maybe subjective in some sense. So I think both are right, and both can be pulled out in this story. And this, what I am confident of, though, is Dickens sees these two things as the doom of humankind, right? Because ignorance allows the wants to go unchecked.
Yeah, I didn't think about it from that perspective, but I think that's a good commentary in that also then Scrooge is in a position where he could actually do something about that. In terms of bringing education and actually filling that need that so many have.
Yeah, exactly.
Start to clean his soul a little bit.
Yeah.
With all his cash.
And it again, getting back to those archetypes of saviors, right? Tiny Tim is sort of another savior of Scrooge because his situation pushes Scrooge maybe over that final hump that he has to get over, where he becomes a second father to Tiny Tim. And in some cases the roles are reversed. Like on A Miracle on 31st Street, another Christmas story, an old man saves a child by being kind to a child and kind of revitalizing a sense of wonder and imagination and all that good stuff to the little girl. So what I'm noticing as we're going through this, which I didn't prepare for, and I don't have this in my notes, but Scrooge is given chances throughout his life with these saviors and their children a couple times, like his sister and Tiny Tim at the end of the book. So maybe this is the chiastic structure you're talking about, Jonathan. And at the end of the book, it's a child again that now, as an older man, Scrooge can be his savior to some degree. Well, prevent him from dying by offering him medical aid, paying for his medical aid that he needs. So, I think it's really cool the way Dickens weave this in. But that, ladies and germs, brings us to chapter 4. The ghost of Christmas yet to come glides towards Scrooge. Scrooge asks the spirit if it is the ghost he was told to expect. But the spirit merely motions him to follow. Scrooge expresses his willingness to learn whatever the spirit has to teach him. He finds himself with the spirit in the stock exchange, at the time Scrooge would normally expect to be there. He looks around, but he doesn't see himself in his usual corner. The spirit directs him to a trio of businessmen of his acquaintance who are discussing a death. One man introduces the subject by saying, well, old Scratch got his own last, hey? None of these seem to care in the least about the dead man. One says he was probably the closest friend to the deceased, given that they used to stop and exchange a few words every time they met. Next, the ghost brings Scrooge to a rag and bone shop in a poor, run-down part of town. A laundress, a charwoman, a cleaning lady, and an undertaker arrive, each carrying a bundle from the home of the dead man. The undertaker stole some cheap trinkets, the laundress took towels and silver spoons, and Mrs. Dilber, the charwoman, took the bed curtains right off the bed and the shirt off the corpse. They laugh among themselves over their own ingenuity, as well as the parsimony and ill nature of the deceased, who was alone in his death. Scrooge assures the ghost that he understands the intended message. His life tends in this direction now. If he doesn't change, he could end up like this poor man. The scene changes, and Scrooge finds himself at the bedside of a corpse. The room is cold and dark. The bed curtains have been torn down, and rats and cats prowl inside, waiting for the opportunity to devour the body of the unwanted and unloved man. The spirit points to the sheet that covers the body,
Sorry, I'll try not to laugh.
indicating that Scrooge should raise it and look at the corpse. Scrooge cannot bring himself to do so. Scrooge begs the ghost to show him somehow who has any feeling associated with the death of an unnamed man. The ghost takes into the house of a young couple. Scrooge has the impression that the spirit is taking him back and forth from one time to another, not in any chronological sequence. The young couple, having learned of the man's death, are relieved because it means they will have another week or two to pay the debt they owed the dead man. It will be enough to keep them out of the poorhouse or debtor's prison. Scrooge begs the spirit to show him some tenderness connected with the death. The spirit takes Scrooge to the Cratchit home, where Mrs. Cratchit and her daughters are sewing grave clothes for Tiny Tim. Bob returns home from making the burial arrangements. He tells the family about the kindness of Scrooge's nephew Fred, who, encountering Bob on the street, asked him what was the matter and expressed his sincere condolences. Fred then begged Bob to come to him if there was ever anything that he could do for Bob or his family. Bob says that it wasn't the offer of help that was so touching and comforting, but rather the kindness in Fred's words. Bob tells his family that they must always remember Tiny Tim and love each other for his sake. Scrooge asks the ghost about the identity of the dead man, and the ghost leads him through an area of town where Scrooge's office is. Scrooge stops to look at the window, hoping to see himself, but the office belongs to someone else. The ghost brings Scrooge to a little weed-choked graveyard and points to one of the headstones. Before looking down and seeing his own name, Scrooge begs the spirit to tell him whether these are the shadows of the things that will be, or the shadows of the things that may be only. The implacable hand wavers, and Scrooge realizes that for all its dreadful appearance, the spirit means him well. He begs it to tell him that he can change his fate. The hand trembles again, but the spirit says nothing. Scrooge catches the spectral hand and tries to hold it, but the spirit gradually dwindles away and becomes a bedpost.
Let's talk about Dickens' narrator here. I think that this kind of slides by, because I haven't read this in a while, right? But the narrator is this authoritarian, it's this like intrusive voice that we get to interact with, because sometimes he breaks the fourth wall and he's like joking around with us as the audience. And like that moment I mentioned earlier in the episode where it's like, if I ever did meet him, you should introduce me to him. And he's like having some jovialness with us as the reader, which is not something that happens in much authorship these days. The second thing that I noticed is this is like a moral tale, right? Like also most books these days are not a moral tale, and the narrator is a moral guide bringing us as the reader through that. So those are some observations I wanted to bring up in terms of like the narrator himself.
I think the way we are pulled into the story via the narrator, it's fascinating for the reason I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, that so much is compressed into so little of a time frame and so little pages. So we get a lot from very little in short, pithy sentences, and some of them are not so pithy, but in a short amount of time, we get a lot of commentary, as Dickens intended, but also a lot of the story. We're pulled into it, at least I am, pulled into the story where, you get little boy Scrooge and what he's probably feeling in that fire, and then as the story continues, him looking at his own grave and saying, "Good spirit, pursued as down upon the ground he fell before it. Your nature intercedes for me and pities me." So he's slowly broken down. And, I mean, I think Jonathan is right. Like, a few more 100 pages, it could have been more of an epic story, right? Like a longer story. Not the slang version of the word epic. But even here, in a few hundred pages, there's so much. Like, look at us, like we're unpacking it on a podcast, or wherever. We could be unpacking it in just a regular book club or in a literary class. But there's so much here to unpack already. And I think the narration and how it's written helps it to be, an enduring story, interesting to talk about hundreds of years later.
One thing I think, one observation I have, and I don't know if you agree with this, but to get your opinion on Tiny Tim in The Last Ghost. The Last Ghost had referenced him dying within a year, and now with this second ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, Tiny Tim has recently passed, it seems, and then this is when he's dying. So it's also saying you're going to die within a year. So it is that like sense of urgency of these things coming very soon, very quickly.
I think that puts pressure on Scrooge himself as well, where he has this dread and this horror where he's like, wait, is this really going to happen? Or is it like implied? And so he starts almost begging and negotiating with the last spirit.
Yeah.
To like in hopes that this could be different.
No.
Yeah. And the death of Tiny Tim contrasted with the death of Scrooge. Mm-hmm. So in his journey, in this hero's journey, anti-hero's journey, there's this scene where Scrooge is unable to lift the sheet from the body that represents, quote, the approach to the inmost cave, the moment of contemplation before his final ordeal. Scrooge is not able to face his own death just yet. He soon will, but in that moment he's not. And then the contrast between what happens to him when he dies, people steal all his crap and like even his business partners, in whatever version of Wall Street these guys have. They're like, yeah, good for him. He probably got his, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So when when Tiny Tim is dying, they weep and speak fondly of him. Even as a child, a poor child, so the thing that Scrooge despises the most, he leaves a legacy that will influence them for the rest of their lives. Like his family is like, we should live like Tiny Tim. He's, small and frail, and he's a child, and he's accepting death nobly, and he still has love in his heart. He's not bitter. And people respond to Scrooge's death kind of like, good riddance. And then the people who are like the cleaning ladies in the neighborhood or wherever, they even hate him because I'm sure he treats them like garbage.
He treats everybody the same.
Yeah.
Poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not necessarily justified in, laughing at his death and stealing his crap. But that's not really a commentary on them. It's a commentary on how horrible Scrooge is, that he dies alone and nobody gives a crap.
No.
And he's robbed in his death. And
May as well rob those who can't fight back. Am I right? Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a commentary that I read, and in contrast to Tiny Tim, this is what the commentary said. By contrast, the only use Scrooge offers after his death is as food for predators, and the only emotion his loss inspires is relief. So...
Yeah, relief that for the couple that wasn't able to pay their rent. So at least we have a couple more weeks now to get. And I thought that was interesting. Okay, it was interesting to me at the early on when he referenced, are the prisons no longer in use? Like, are they out of business or whatever? And I just thought that, like, what does that even mean? Like, are prisons meant to be like for the poor? That concept didn't really, like, I don't really have that
debtor's
concept.
prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and during this era, and even throughout antiquity, if you had a debt, you'd be thrown into prison. You couldn't pay a debt, so... Yeah.
At some point, they wisened up and realized, like, if we put them in prison, we also don't get our money, so we should at least let them work so that we can get something.
Yeah, well,
but I don't know when that happened.
But now people will commit a crime to go to prison so that they can be provided for and at least have food and shelter.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you organize society in a way that is, anyway?
Well, that's a story for a different episode, but okay. I would love to tell you how I would organize society with the cult that I joke about starting.
Here it is.
I may be one of the potential members of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
that
buddy, I got
starting.
you on the VIP list.
Yeah. Yeah, Jonathan has struggled, pun intended, to get his cult off the.
No, finish it.
He already has me working for him for free. So with this,
there it is.
This internship, he's already. Can I at least put this on my LinkedIn or?
Oh yeah. Slave to Side Quest Book Club.
Okay.
Oh, intern.
Title is changed.
Debtor's Prison to Side Quest Book Club.
Yeah. That's the old English spelling of intern is slave.
Oh, it's Christmas, guys. Can't you pull it together for one episode?
No. In Mother Russia, Christmas makes jokes.
In Mother Russia, Christmas buries the dead.
Yep.
We have.
Anyway.
Never mind.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say we have Zwarte Piet in the Netherlands, but I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole. That will be.
Oh, please
this
do.
Will be canceled for sure.
Please tell us about Swars.
You don't know about Zwarte Piet?
Please tell us about Saucy Pete. Tell us about Saucy Pete.
Zwart means black in Dutch, and so it's Black Pete.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
He cleans the chimney for Santa Claus, for Sinterklaas. Yep. So that's why he's black. It's because of the coal.
Yeah, it's not because of blackface.
Yeah,
it's because of the coal.
not because of blackface. He has
He's
coal
a chimney
on
clean.
yeah,
He's a chimney sweep.
Yeah.
it's worth.
Okay, someone's gonna clip this. Okay, so the chimney sweep has coal and soot on him, which is why it's called Saucy Pete or whatever.
Yes, Saucy Pete is now the politically correct term
Oh, okay, all right.
that Jonathan just came up with.
So, moving on.
Bring us home here. Let's keep rolling.
Chapter 5. He calls out to a boy who is passing by and learns that it's Christmas Day. The spirits came in one night rather than 3. Giddy with delight, Scrooge being giddy. No. Giddy with delight, Scrooge sends the boy to purchase the largest turkey in the city and send it anonymously to the Cratchits. After dressing in haste and confusion, Scrooge walks about the city, smiling at everything and everyone, greeting people warmly, and patting the heads of children. He's had a stroke and went insane. He encounters one of the benevolent gentlemen who called at his office the previous day. And in spite of his shame and how he behaved on the occasion, Scrooge approaches and pledges an enormous donation to aid the poor. In the afternoon, he goes to his nephew's house. It takes a great deal of courage to make himself go in, but he finds that his nephew is as good as his word and welcomes Scrooge with open arms. Scrooge arrives at work early the next day, hoping to catch Bob Cratchit coming in late and play a little joke on him. Bob finally arrives and tries to slip into his seat unnoticed, but Scrooge demands to know what Bob means by coming in so late.
The one employee tries to slip into his seat unnoticed for being late. I laughed and laughed.
Yeah. Bob admits that he was making merry the day before and overslept.
Drunk.
Scrooge growls that he will have no more of this. He's going to raise Bob's salary. In fact, Scrooge becomes the benefactor to the Cratchit family and, as mentioned already, a second father to Tiny Tim. With proper medical care, Tim survives and grows strong. People of a certain sort laugh at the change in Scrooge, but he doesn't care what they think of him. People of a better sort say that Ebenezer Scrooge is a man who knows how to keep Christmas in his heart all year long.
He's sitting next to the crackling fire with the Cratchit family now. He can go visit his nephew and not get made fun of entirely. He's turned the page, this guy. Turn the page. So what did we learn, gentlemen?
Well, I know what Scrooge learned.
Don't associate with the poors.
The opposite. The people he most despised or looked down on for the kindness or what he would call weakness are the quickest to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
But he comes to realize that the people who laugh or deride anybody different from themselves, are the ones who laugh at him now, but he no longer cares about their opinion, if he ever did.
No, I mean, I think it would be, I was thinking about just that huge contrast overnight that happened, and just how bizarre that would be to just witness that in a person or in yourself, to be just completely different the next day.
Yeah. And I think that's done for the sake of brevity for the story. But if that actually happened in real life, and I think it does happen in real life, because people sometimes when they're faced with something insurmountable, like emotionally and jarring and, life-changing, I think people can change in an instant. And to see that, 100% agree. If you saw somebody who's been an asshole all their life and treated you, with contempt, and all of a sudden they're like buying your dinner, begging for forgiveness, and jumping around or giddily like Scrooge, that might be jarring for you. You might think somebody's playing a joke on you, or the Scrooge in your life has literally gone off the deep end and is either playing a joke on you or had a mental breakdown somehow. So
he's had a stroke.
I don't know. Yeah.
You would treat it with some apprehension, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, Bob Cratchit's like, I'm going to grab the ruler and beat this man and then call for help because, Scrooge thinks this is a joke.
Yeah.
Bob Cratchit doesn't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Scrooge is like, "Oh, I did the humor."
Yeah. No, the fact that that's a good point. The fact that he goes, haha, I'm a changed man. I'm going to play the most horrible prank I can on the man that I constantly berate. So, hey, you piece of shit. You're okay. I'm giving you a raise. Like, what? What's going on?
How dare you, only employee that I have, be late the day after Christmas?
Yeah.
Just for that, I'm giving you a raise.
15 minutes.
Oh, I did the humor, and we're going to drink during lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's very funny.
It would have been even better if he's like, hey, you're late and your wife just called, your kid's dead. Just kidding. I'm paying for his medical expenses.
Real, the modern retelling that Slava's going to do for this is going to be great.
Yeah.
We should make that a short. Slava does a modern retelling of the Christmas Carol.
Excellent. I'm for it. I'm here.
The Russian version.
The Russian version with cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. Something that I did want to talk about as we wind down here is, so in the book it like mentions sound effects a little bit. How is that for you guys, where it mentions kind of like, oh, and then the floor creaks and this, that, and the other? Like, do you like sound effects in your reading, or do you prefer to skip that and it's not for you?
Is this a
I'm
subtle
fine
way
with
to?
it.
Is this a subtle way to ask us if we've appreciated the sound effects you've been dropping through this episode?
Fair. That's a fair question. No, I'm just looking at my notes here as we're wrapping up from a couple days ago when I mentioned the chiastic structure, and I was like, one topic to discuss: sound effects while reading. And then I reinterpreted it and was like, I was doing that during this episode, so no, not
Okay.
that. Like when it says the floor creaked and there was a whoosh of the wind and things like that. Does that take you out of the moment when you're reading stuff like that, or?
No. If it's done well and it's, I don't want to say part and parcel of the story, but it's part and parcel, I guess, is the only term that's coming to mind, of the type of writing of the era. It's a little more descriptive, or maybe this is meant for kids, so it's a little bit more geared towards kids so they can get their minds into the story. I don't care if it's done well. I've read books that have no sound effects, but are descriptive about the person's inner thoughts or their feelings or the aura, if you will, around them, like ghost stories specifically, or what's going on in the room. And not always are the sounds explored. And then the other stories, sounds are like the most important thing. That's what drives the fear in the character we're reading about. If it's done well, I don't care either way.
It blends in really well, but also Dickens is like a very seasoned author, so, may he not turn in his grave with what we've done to his story.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll visit you tonight, Jonathan.
Maybe he'll just stand there with a sound effects boombox and just keep clicking the different sound effects.
That's
my
the hell you
dreams.
deserve.
Well, speaking of hell, we are going to descend into hell in our next episode. So we're not done with ghosts. We're going deeper into hell. Any final thoughts before Slava and I move past the river Styx into the first layer of hell? A Merry Christmas to
And
each.
to all, a good night.
What does
God-
Tiny Tim say?
God bless us, everyone.
That's what it is. Yes, thank you. Clearly, I didn't get Tiny Tim's lesson very well because I can't even remember it.
Never mind. I don't want to say anything. We're going to leave on a somber and cheery note. Well, it's somber and cheery. I'm having a stroke. We're going to live. Oh, my gosh.
We're going to live. That's
gonna
right,
live.
Slava.
Let's all
That's
live.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Let's all live.
Yes.
And that's how we're ending 2025
Mm-hmm.
on Side Quest. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We will see you next time. And
In hell.
that's true. That's true. That's all of those things are true. Join us next time in hell. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I have a favor to ask you. If you like what we're doing, the simplest way to support the show is to hit subscribe. In return, we'll keep leveling up, and we'll listen to your feedback and read authors that you suggest. And of course, we'll take side quests along the way. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.